because, like I said, in between the, like, DLCs coming out, I actually went back and looked at a bunch of shit who said, and so much of what he has said was lies. Everything is lies.
There is no fucking IV editor, and that's so stupid. That pisses me off. Because there are so many Pokemon in the DLC that I want to use, and I had some ideas for.
Though we also have, unless people haven't figured it out, something else really funny. People thought the DLC that this was going to give you, because of the Blood Moon Ursaluna being breedable, that this would give you a way to, like, evolve Ursaluna into that, but it seems like...
No.
Again.
Not a thing.
No.
You want to talk...
To be fair, that wasn't a, like, internet leaker man saying that...
Speaking of that, there's the other funny thing that also happened.
What?
They didn't throw peat blocks into this, so you can't even get regular Ursaluna. You still need Legends.
Well, this only fixed a few of the... It's only fixed a few of...
Yes, but people were more specifically focusing on, it's like, you still need Legends.
I have to go pee. Also, I also have to do something off recording for a minute, so it will be a small minute.
If I decide to maybe cut to me rambling for a minute, just to leave certain things in if I feel like I need to, because I didn't talk about it in my playthrough, because at the time I was unsure. The reason that the whole IV editor and PK Hex mode bullshit pisses me off is because I hoped that out of everything Ku said, that maybe Game Freak realized that this needs to happen. Because this needs to happen, the ability to edit IVs needs to become a mechanic. Because the bottle caps force a 31, and that's great. Except sometimes you don't want a 31. You want a 0 for, like, Trick Room, or a 0 attack on a special attacker so that foul play could hurt you slightly less. And if they had an IV editor, this would shut people up, because everyone that complains about IVs being bad in Pokemon, even though I will be this person, a lot of sets are not that hard to get if you try, because you can pass IVs in breeding. So you can pass IVs in breeding, so you could pass a 0, or you could pass a weird IV if you used a calculator and figured out that you had it. And it's a little bit annoying, but breeding fixes a lot of the problems. The issue is legendaries and things you can't breed, where you would want lower IVs, because you have to reset the game until you get what you want. I spent on and off collectively 3 days in Pokemon Shield throwing a Master Ball at Glacier until the Glacier rolled a 0 speed. And the problem, Calyrex rolls separately, so getting a 0 speed Calyrex, I don't have one because of that, because I was focusing on just the Glacier, and that took on and off 3 days of work. And legendaries, I think, are a valid criticism for an Ivy editor. But in general, it needs to happen so that it can shut people up. Because I will, even in my cynicism of calling people kind of lazy, where you don't want to engage with some simple mechanics, I will agree that certain combinations of bullshit can be a pain in the ass. Like getting a Trick Room special attack user to have a 0 speed and a 0 attack IV, I've done. And usually if I'm doing that, it can take me weeks of breeding for a few hours a day because your IVs are passed between the two parents, but only 5 are. If they would let the parents pass 6 IVs, then getting the 2 zeros in breeding wouldn't actually be that bad, because you could have 2 zeros, and then your positive stats, if they made that change, then double zeros in breeding would not be that bad. You would just need to make sure one of the parents had the 0 for attack and one of the parents had the 0 for speed, or one of the parents has both or whatever. But at this point, for legendaries, I do think an IV editor needs to happen so that you can just edit your IVs to do... So that you can edit your IVs to be whatever set you need, because sometimes in VGC you'll get these weird sets where it's like, oh no, it's a Trick Room set, but you need like a 5 IV. A 0 is too low, and like a 6 would be too high, and anything under that is also a little bit too low because we're trying to reach this oddly specific speed tier. So you need a 5 IV. If you could just edit the damn IVs, that would be fine. And it annoys me because there are a bunch of legendaries that can be great in Trick Room, and it feels like in some instances that they're trying to get people away from sitting there until you get a 0 IV in speed, like Blood Moon Ursaluna, that also happens to have like a 0 IV in physical attack, where you literally sat there for months rolling to get the double 0. Naturally, when 3 of the Ursaluna stats will be 31, meaning 50% of the time, probably, you're going to get a 31 attack or a 31 speed. So you would need one of the other stats to basically, you know, be like, okay, I said 1, but like, if I'm leaving this ramble in, which I might even not do, it's like, you basically have like a 50%, so that would mean 3 of your stats would be 31s, and then 2 of your stats would be a 0, and that's incredibly hard to come by naturally because the game is going to force 31 onto 3 stats. And when you have Pokemon like Blood Moon Ursaluna, where people would be willing to sit there and reset until it's optimized, trying to get people into a scenario where they can't optimize like that is annoying. But the other thing, and I hate sounding like certain YouTubers, but I need to call people out, because this is sus as fuck, and it always bothers me that you'll see like a Blood Moon Ursaluna and you just happen to have a 0 speed IV, you just happen to have a 0 attack IV as well, and you also happen to roll a quiet nature. It's like, I could get the IVs, maybe, but then you happen to also roll quiet nature, and that could happen. But that always looks like you basically modified the game to create an Ursaluna, or hack the Ursaluna you caught, edit the stats to be this way specifically, and then you use that Blood Moon Ursaluna online, and because all you did was modify the IVs, it will pass hack check, and you just modified it into a state it could exist in, but this state is tedious and super unlikely, but at least Blood Moon Ursaluna is easy to reset and check. Anybody that has a quiet nature Therian form Anemoris with a 0 attack and a 0 speed IV, I'm sorry, I am calling you out, you fucking cheated. Because you cannot check in Legends. And no, the 0 in Legends is not the equivalent of the 0 in the main series. Legends 0 is actually a range of IVs. If the 0 in Legends was straight out the equivalent of a 0 IV,
Okay.
that would be fine, but it's not, and there are far too many ranges there.
Okay, problems. Problems don't.
I know. I've just been sitting here rambling about IV bullshit.
Yeah, you know I had to do that.
I know. If it gave me the fucking time to kind of ramble if I left that in. I'm just mad at the fucking cool bullshit because we need an IV editor at this point, mostly for legendaries, because people, like, I don't want to sound like, I said this, if I left it in, I don't want to sound like certain YouTubers, but you come at me with your Trick Room team and you have a fucking 0 IV.
Skill issue, Billy. Just RNG harder.
You come at me with an Anemoris with a 0 speed IV and a 0 attack IV, and she's quiet nature? I'm sorry, you fucking cheated.
Okay, to be fair, isn't there a Nature Mint equivalent item in Legends, so you could at least get, like...
Okay, first of all, with the Nature Mint, if you moved an Anemoris into this game...
Even if there isn't an equivalent to that in Legends, you could...
One, Nature Mints exist in Legends. It's not my point.
My point was, to be fair, at least the nature, that is something you could alter, was it?
You could fake a nature with the mint, but I meant a natural Anemoris with a quiet nature.
Yes, I know.
But the thing is, in Legends, 0 grit level in Legends is not the equivalent of a 0 IV in the main games. The 0 in Legends is a range.
Because Legends only goes to like 12, they're technically all ranges except for the map.
Yes, but... No, well, there's a funny thing about that. Which is interesting. When I moved Pokemon from the main game into Legends, just to see what it did with the IVs, a 31 IV forced the Pokemon from the main game to have a basic grit level of 3. A 31 IV in the main games.
Because I seem to remember someone explaining the, like, supposed reason for that, but I don't remember what they said. I think it was because when things go into Legends, their Legends stats are randomly rolled the first time they enter, because Legends works on its own system. Nah.
It's not even the point I'm trying to make here. Legends, in the game code for Legends, it's actually far more bizarre and we've talked a bit about this, and I know this is a thing because I've seen people do it. Legends backend code actually rolls the proper, like, traditional IVs. They're just masking it with the fucking grid system. And the reason I know that they're masking it with the grid system is because...
Damn it, miss.
Remember how this works.
Yeah, I know it's the most basic one, but...
No, even if you miss a ring, you're...
Because this is the most basic bitch one, you have to actively try to fail to lose.
Basically, Legends backend calculates the proper traditional IVs and stuff. And the reason I bring this up is because there was that, like, fan server where someone hacked a switch. And if you communicate with this hacked switch, this bot that's running on the hacked switch will look at your Legends Arceus game and it will spit out your current RNG seed. And someone basically shiny hunted, just to show the method, they shiny hunted in Legends by getting the RNG seed, forcing a, like, alpha Pokemon to exist and be shiny. And not only did they force an alpha Pokemon to exist and be shiny, while it will not display in Legends, they basically had the bot figure out that this shiny had perfect IVs. And basically, they caught the shiny, moved it into the main game, used the judge, and was like, the IVs are perfect. Meaning on the back end, it is running a fucking calculation to know what the IVs are. So, if you used that bot and tried to catch an Amorous, you could very easily use a bot like that and try to get an RNGC to get a 0 attack, 0 speed, an Amorous, and you could even get an RNGC where you also roll the Quiet Nature. But my cynicism is basically the unlikely event of anything in Legends that's oddly specific for, like, Trick Room and shit being perfectly viable.
Rocky Helmet.
It's a classic Skarmory.
So, I find it hilarious that, like, that they do that for this reason.
Yes.
Ha. So then I can just Aqua Jet you and my...
Ivy Cudgel's non-contact on a Rocky Helmet. I keep forgetting it's not a contact move because you're technically...
Is that a guaranteed or is that a chance to work?
I believe it's guaranteed, but you need to make physical contact. And that ain't physical. Well, it is physical, it's just not physical contact. Anyway, my rambly point. Having an Enamorous super set up for Trick Room is very logistically unlikely because an Enamorous is a massive pain in the ass to hunt. An Enamorous is a massive pain in the ass to legitimately hunt. And anyone that happens to have a perfect Trick Room Enamorous, like, I I do feel like...
Let's see if you live.
You have a, like, perfectly viable Trick Room and Amorous. I'm sorry, but you fucking cheated. Or you use one of those bots, and I know semantically those bots are not cheating, but you're still accessing a hacked switch. No, like... With that said, however... With that said, however, because I do...
Eat that for days. That was the crit. Like, that was the crit, boy.
Anyway. Back to my fucking point.
Holy shit, that did a lot of fucking damage. Like, I know it is Hydro Pump, but it's like, my god.
Using a bot to get an RNG seed, since you're technically not hacking, isn't the worst thing.
How did you undo Trick Room?
You were faster than that Uniclus under the Trick Room.
Huh. How the fuck do you even do that?
Well, the thing is, well, Trick Room has a negative priority, so I think the game just looked. Actually, there is a weird, funny thing going on here too, which if her AI is doing, what?
Because Metagross is
kind of fast. That it's actually undoing the Trick Room.
For Metagross.
Yes. Which, if that is the case, that is actually an AI thinking really well. However, the AI has been kind of dumb because Metagross is not that fast and would have actually been able to beat the Ogerpon.
And that's why I have Acid Spray on this set.
Going back to my little statement, because I do think using a tool or something to look at an RNGC, to know where something is in a game or whatever, is not cheating if you're technically not inherently hacking, because even in Pokemon, like Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, I used an RNG seed checker method to figure out where Feebas were in that one giant lake. It's just that one tool for Legends Arceus. You need to.
Oh, because the RNG, like, the RNG seed for Feebas, because this is based off the shit they did in the original, that's the RNG seed that's based off your trainer ID, isn't it? So that you literally just input that number in a calculator and it tells you what square the...
No, BDSP uses a different RNG algorithm.
But it's the same idea.
Someone figured out what it connects to and basically made a calculator that if you give it the correct information about your game, it will spit out a perfect RNGC to know where the Feebas are. It was a Feebas finder. And they did. And, like, I've done that. And using an RNG manipulation, like, fan tool to know some things, I don't think is inherently cheating. And even the Legends thing, someone made a bot, which you do have to communicate with, but, like, an unmodified Switch can communicate with that thing, and it's literally just the bot communicates with your game for 5 seconds. You just connect to the bot, it pings your game, And once the bot looks at your game, it knows your game state. And it can give you some RNG seed stuff. So you could ping that one bot and get an Amarys. And that's a little bit less skeevy than full out hacking, but you would have to make sure that your timing with that is flawless enough to fight the Amarys on the exact set of frames that generates what you're looking for. It's time for the question of the day and my overall thoughts on the topic. So, anyway, how many of you also think that they really should add some type of IV editor to the next mainline Pokemon game? Because at this point, not having an editor that allows you to change IVs just promotes cheating. And while I will generally say that you can do breeding and fix most of your problems, I do think that we need an IV editing tool so that we can basically fix up legendaries or create oddly specific sets. Because, like I said, bottle caps create the effect of a 31 IV, but sometimes you might need a 0 or anything in between, and all that does is force people to reset if they're playing legitimately, or this forces people to cheat and generate exactly what they need. And when it comes to oddly specific IVs on certain legendaries, people will basically cheat and generate those legendaries with the exact IVs that they need. And all this does is encourage people to cheat, because people that are trying to play legitimately are at a disadvantage when it comes to very specific nonsense. Because if you generate a Pokemon, you could basically use it immediately, meaning you don't need to spend hours trying to reset until you get exactly what you need. And at the moment, I'm working on resetting for a 0 attack IV and a 0 speed IV on a Blood Moon Ursaluna, and I'm pretty sure I've surpassed 50 hours of resets at this point, and that's a perfect example. It shouldn't take me 50 fucking hours of resets to get what I need, because I'm not cheating. And yet, anyone that is cheating could basically have what I need in like 5 minutes. And that does give them a massive advantage, because that basically saves them time. And while I generally think a lot of hacking was not too bad when it comes to legendaries and specific nonsense like Blood Moon Ursaluna, I do think hacking is infinitely better and easier and does give you an active advantage, since anyone that wants what you have will need to sit there for hours in order to get it, unless they get incredibly lucky. Meanwhile, you can just generate exactly what you need and actually start battling. And if your team needs oddly specific nonsense, you can basically cheat and get that nonsense. And this is why I hope they let you edit IVs in the next mainline Pokemon game. Because while I think breeding and stuff is fine, I do think IVs are a problem on legendaries and stuff, and they should just let you mass edit those. That way, you don't need to cheat nearly as hard in order to get a competitively viable Pokemon. And this would also remove hours of pointless, tedious resetting, because you could basically just edit the IVs of the Pokemon. And when you edit the IVs of the Pokemon, it will basically be exactly as you need it, and that would save you a lot of time. Because right now it comes down to legendaries, and I will be this person. Anyone that has most of these legendaries or oddly specific stuff like Blood Moon Ursaluna, I'm going to generally just assume you cheated, which I do understand because wholeheartedly fuck actually resetting for this nonsense. But that goes back to my point. While I think cheating is not as needed, I will agree it is basically needed for very specific Pokemon, and all it does is save you time, but you do end up with an advantage, because anyone that isn't cheating will basically need to waste a lot of time resetting in order to match you, and your advantage becomes an advantage of time where you're able to get exactly what you need perfectly optimized in seconds, and that could be an actual determining factor in a tournament if you and another person are using similar Pokemon. Let's say you cheated and generated a perfect Blood Moon Ursaluna, but you have a 0 attack IV and a 0 speed IV, and someone decides to get close enough to 0 and they go with a higher IV under Trick Room, you will always beat them. And because you basically cheated, that does mean you were able to have an advantage in a mirror match because your set was able to underspeed their set since you cheated and generated yours with a 0, and someone decided to go with a low IV because they thought that would be good enough, and they thought outside of a Trick Room that might actually be useful, which that does have its uses. But if they were opting for a 0 and they settled for a low IV because you cheated and generated something with a 0, you always win the mirror match if Trick Room is up. And that is somewhat unfair, but I'm getting way off topic. Anyway, you can leave your thoughts, opinions, and answers in the comments, or you can leave them on social media. All of my social media links, as well as my Discord links, are in the video description. Now, as always, I need to be a shill for a minute. If you subscribe to the channel, and if you follow me on social media, that really helps our communities grow. But anyway, I hope you all enjoyed the video, and I hope I will see you all next time. So, as always, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night, everybody. I hope you come back someday. See you later.